My unfaithful wife completely destroyed our 33-year marriage. I am now in the process of getting a divorce and planning to leave the country, while she remains to deal with the consequences of her actions. Please be warned, this is going to be a lengthy account. I am writing this not only because I frequently receive inquiries about updates, but also as a way for myself to process and understand what transpired, even 2 years later. I am a man in my mid-40s, and my ex-wife is 2 years my junior. Together, we have 3 children. 2 of them are now technically adults and will only need to co-parent for about 3 more years. The youngest child is still dependent. We have been together since the late 20th century, marrying young in our early 20s. For a significant portion of our marriage, I was genuinely happy. However, around 2017, I began to notice that my ex-wife was increasingly distant. Our middle child went through a severe depressive episode, battling self-destructive thoughts. Initially, I believed that this was the primary reason for her distance. I was completely on board with prioritizing our child's well-being, thinking that our marriage was robust enough to endure a few years where our intimate time as a couple would naturally take a backseat to our child's mental health needs. To provide a clearer picture, here is a timeline of the affair. In 2008, Facebook was rapidly gaining popularity, and like many others, I used it extensively, sending friend requests to everyone I knew. At one point, I had nearly 2,000 friends. During the summer of 2008, my ex-wife sent a friend request to her former boyfriend. They had previously dated when she was 17 and he was nearly 23, about a year before we met. Their relationship ended because he ghosted her and likely cheated on her. Despite their breakup, they reconnected, started chatting again, and eventually began meeting up about 2 to 3 times a week to engage in sexual activities. This went on for approximately 6 to 7 months, specifically from the latter part of 2008 until around March 2009. During this period, they met during the day at my ex-wife's mother-in-law's house and then proceeded to meet in the bedroom. At this time, my ex-wife was diligently working towards her bachelor's degree, and I was fully supporting our family financially to allow her to focus on her studies. We had 3 young children back then, and I have since had DNA testing done, confirming that all of our children are indeed mine. I did notice that my ex-wife was very distant during this time, but I attributed it to the economic downturn and the fact that I had lost my job. I believed her distance stemmed from financial stress and disappointment in me. I have always been financially prudent, maintaining savings and securing another job quickly after losing the first. Although looking back, the job hunt seemed only a minor obstacle. At the time, it was incredibly stressful for me. I believed her distance was due to these circumstances, and the affair eventually faded. Her former boyfriend was also in a relationship with children at the time and expressed a desire to leave his wife, persistently urging my wife to leave me. However, she chose not to. From 2011 to 2013, they sporadically reconnected, meeting up in the summer of 2013. They would meet in the front seat of his car while 2 children remained safely in the back seats. After this period, there was no contact until 2017. In the spring of 2017, the former boyfriend contacted my ex-wife again, falsely claiming he was getting divorced and was interested in her relationship status. I spoke with him and discovered he was not actually divorced, leading me to believe he wanted to explore a new relationship with my ex-wife but did not want to commit until he was certain. My ex-wife immediately took the opportunity, and they began meeting up approximately 2 to 5 times a year from 2017 to 2020. The former boyfriend lived about 2 hours away from our town, and back in 2008 to 2009, he worked as a truck driver, which meant he passed by our town almost daily, providing ample opportunity for frequent meetings. During 2017 to 2020, my ex-wife fabricated stories about weekend trips with her friends, a common excuse that I trusted and didn't question. I also regularly went on trips with my friends, usually once or twice a year, and never saw anything wrong with her doing the same. These weekends were typically dedicated to the children, with activities like dining out, movie nights, and staying up late. Then, in 2021, my ex-wife began the year by going out of town in January, followed by another trip in mid-March, and yet another in late March. She returned home on April 1st, announcing that she wanted a divorce. She expressed that she still loved me but was no longer in love with me, listing numerous flaws and claiming she had been unhappy for a long time. This kind of explanation is typical among cheaters, following a familiar pattern seen in many similar situations across platforms like Reddit. I was utterly devastated. I immediately began working on addressing my perceived flaws, desperate to save our marriage. I felt gaslit into believing that I was the sole problem in our relationship. Within 10 days, I sought therapy, managing to secure an appointment quickly by reaching out to as many professionals as possible. I took full responsibility for the state of our marriage and did everything within my power to mend it. She stated that she needed space and began to distance herself further, taking every other weekend away. I believed her when she said she needed space to think things over, not realizing that she was actually spending those weekends with her former boyfriend, who only saw the children every other weekend. I continually asked her what she wanted to do about our marriage, but she remained uncertain and repeatedly postponed discussions about divorce. She even offered to sign divorce papers multiple times, but she conveniently kept the papers in her purse, ensuring I would see them whenever I left the house. Calmly, I told her that I understood if she wanted a divorce and that I didn't want to stay with someone who didn't want to be with me. However, she consistently delayed making any final decisions, leaving me feeling like a doormat. By July 2021, she claimed she wanted to give our marriage another chance. However, in mid-July, she hid her trip to visit her former boyfriend while I was out of town participating in an ultramarathon. I had hoped she would surprise me at the finish line, providing me with the mental support I needed to complete the race. Instead, I returned home the next day exhausted and sore from the race, only to find that she was not at home. Our children took care of me by doing things like grocery shopping, cooking dinner, and bringing ice packs from the freezer. Later that evening, my ex-wife came home late and concealed the fact that she had spent the night at her former boyfriend's place. She continued to visit him in early August, taking the two younger children with me to visit my sister on a Friday. She lied to both me and our oldest child, arranging for her former boyfriend to pick her up and spend the night at his place, returning the next day to join us. In mid-August, her former boyfriend went on his own trip, so she didn't visit him then. However, a significant health issue arose in late August when my ex-wife had to spend 2 nights in the hospital. Naturally, I took care of everything, bringing her necessary belongings without being asked, expecting gratitude. Instead, she became upset when I went through her purse to retrieve something she had requested. It was then that I discovered the divorce papers still in her purse, despite not having seen them since early July. She continued to visit her former boyfriend in late August, deceiving her mother into joining her to visit an aunt in the same city as her former boyfriend. She sneaked out of the hotel both evenings to meet him, effectively hiding her infidelity from me. In early September, just days after our wedding anniversary, I grew increasingly suspicious and confronted her on September 12th. She admitted to a small part of the affair, which I recognized as a typical partial truth often seen in reconciliation attempts on Reddit. I asked her which one of us she wanted to be with, and she said me, yet she continued to send him brief Snapchat messages, claiming she needed time to end things with him. She convinced me that she wanted to handle the breakup in person and arranged to meet him in a town about an hour away to end their relationship face-to-face. Trusting that the affair had been ongoing only through 2021, I foolishly agreed, believing she would do the right thing. On September 25th, instead of ending things, they went for a drive and made out. She suggested getting a hotel room to be intimate, but he preferred to go back to his house. They still had location services on, so she couldn't meet him at his place, leading to them having sexual relations while driving around. Although I still don't fully believe they engaged in intercourse that time, it was becoming irrelevant at that point. She finally sent him a message breaking things off on October 19th. I remember these dates vividly because every day during those 5 weeks and 2 days was excruciating. Something inside me died a little each day. I created my Reddit account in November 2021, making my first post before speaking with the former boyfriend's ex-wife and the second after talking to her and learning more about the situation. Throughout the rest of 2021, I desperately tried to reconcile, but I was a complete wreck. We consulted 3 marriage counselors, one during the summer of 2021, which was a waste of time and money since my ex-wife hadn't confessed to cheating yet. As expected, everyone blamed me for the state of our marriage. The next 2 marriage counselors were equally unhelpful, each wanting to share the blame, a common and frustrating tactic that left me distrustful of such professionals. I entered these sessions as a broken man, only to be told that I was at fault for various issues in our marriage and that both parties needed to take responsibility. I have always been adept at communicating, never keeping secrets, and openly expressing my needs and feelings. Of course, I wasn't a perfect spouse. I worked a lot, spent considerable time with friends and family, and admittedly did about a third of the household chores, which was unfair to my ex-wife. Additionally, I grew increasingly angry at my ex-wife from once or twice a year in 2017 to about 6 to 8 times a year in 2020. This anger stemmed from feeling ignored and sensing the growing distance between us. I would raise my voice when she deflected or dismissed issues, insisting there was nothing wrong, even though I knew that wasn't true. I understand now that it was wrong, but at the time, I felt gaslit and frustrated. Therapy taught me that I tend to enter fight mode when threatened, as it gives me a sense of control and strength. However, she never once communicated any issues, leaving me in a state of shell shock. I didn't need a marriage counselor to tell me that I should take equal responsibility for our marriage's decline. my ex-wife had single-handedly destroyed it. This account is becoming quite lengthy, and writing it is causing me emotional distress and triggering past traumas. Therefore, I will continue this narrative in another post, either later today or in the next few days. For now, this covers the infidelity, and the next post will delve into the aftermath and my current state. Update 1 ***. This will likely be my final post on Reddit. I rarely use Reddit anymore, especially the infidelity subreddits, as it now feels like pain shopping. I need to move forward with my life. On September 12, 2021, which marks a significant date for me, I informed my parents and siblings about my wife's affair. Initially, my brother seemed sympathetic. He and his wife had gotten together around 2010 to 2011 after she cheated on her husband to be with him. I wasn't entirely certain about their affair, as they didn't discuss it much, but there were rumors. I spoke with my brother and, with his permission, reached out to his wife to understand better what was happening and to grasp my ex-wife's mindset. I didn't discuss anything with his wife without my brother's consent. My brother seemed to have forgotten about their affair, but his wife confirmed it and provided insights into my ex-wife's thoughts and feelings. Christmas 2021 was particularly tough. We celebrated together, but it was challenging for me. My birthday also falls in December, and I cried when receiving presents from my children, feeling as though no one genuinely cared about me. When New Year's arrived, I didn't feel like celebrating. At midnight, as we stood on our balcony watching the fireworks, I was triggered by memories of the previous year when my ex-wife stood by my side but used the moment to send a Snapchat video to her former boyfriend. In 2022, the years began to pass slowly. As a professor, after finishing grading papers and exams, I could usually relax for the last 10 to 12 days of each year, with the semester ramping up slowly until mid-January. In mid-January 2022, while having dinner at my parents' house with my brother, his wife, their children, and my own parents, I was suffering from undiagnosed PTSD. This was not an excuse, but an explanation for my state of mind. During dinner, my mother started telling a confusing story that irritated me, leading to an argument. I fully acknowledge that I was at fault and regret it, but at the time, I was dealing with numerous arguments with my ex-wife about nonsensical issues. My mother's story triggered me, and I responded loudly, which led to my younger brother standing up and yelling at me. I left the room to cool off, but then decided to return to resolve the conflict, leading to a heated exchange where I yelled at him. My brother pushed me out of the front door, but I didn't resist, understanding that a physical fight between us would have been harmful. I owned up to starting the argument and decided to walk home to calm down. After about 45 minutes, I called my mother to apologize. I received a text from my brother apologizing and expressing a desire to talk. I accepted his apology, understanding that people lose their temper, but I asked him to call me to discuss further. That was the last time I heard from him until November 2022. Over the next 2 months, I received only a few short, superficial phone calls from my mother. In mid-March, my mother's birthday, she and my father went away for a weekend trip. During a hike, my father had a terrible fall, breaking several ribs and fracturing his C5 lumbar vertebrae, necessitating a night in the hospital. My mother called me around 10:30 p.m. that evening, insisting that I drive over, about an hour's drive, so she wouldn't have to drive home in the dark. My parents are in their late 60s, not elderly, but not young either, and I didn't want my mother to risk an accident on her way home. On the way back, my mother asked how I was doing, and I told her I wasn't well at all. I am severely depressed, grappling with self-destructive thoughts. Earlier that week, I had gone to get an STD test because my ex-wife had admitted to having unprotected sex, including anal sex, with her former boyfriend. I shared with my mother how humiliating it was to visit the STD clinic at my age, having believed that I had always practiced safe sex with my wife and had not been with anyone else since the late last century. My mother responded by saying that having unprotected sex is typical behavior during an affair. She has always been the type to excuse others' behavior, guilt trip when someone complains, and diminish others' struggles by claiming someone else has it worse. Her response felt like a gut punch, so I changed the subject. By the end of March, my brother sent an email to my ex-wife expressing his concerns about me being abusive and urging her to leave me, stating that he was there to support her and our children. My ex-wife took about a week to 10 days to show me this email. I insisted she respond, and she simply refuted his claims. About a month later, in late April, he sent another email in mid-May 2022, doubling down on his accusations, labeling me as controlling and dismissing my self-destructive thoughts as mere attention-seeking. She responded firmly, calling his accusations baseless and stating that if anyone was abusive, it was me. She showed me all these emails, and all I did was read them and demand that she respond truthfully. This situation is complex, but honestly, it's absolute nonsense. To provide some context about my relationship with my brother, I am 6 years older than him. During our childhood, I was occasionally mean to him, holding him down, threatening to spit on him, giving him backhanded punches, and forcing him into awkward situations like giving him wedgies. While this behavior was unacceptable, it was somewhat typical big brother antics from the late 80s and early 90s. I moved out when I was 20, distancing myself from a much younger brother. Although I regret my past actions, especially those between the ages of 12 to 14, I believe they were part of standard sibling rivalry. My brother, however, has struggled with alcoholism and has had difficulty maintaining jobs, leading our parents to invest in a house for him and his wife to provide stability. In late April, I spoke with my mother over the phone, and the conversation became very heated. She accused me of always being rude and making excuses for my wife. In one sentence, she claimed that if my father had spoken about me the way I was speaking about my wife, he would have divorced her on the spot. I was not bad-mouthing my ex-wife, I was merely recounting her actions. She then stated that she couldn't understand why I was still married to her and suggested that I was either depressed or suffering from PTSD, despite not having an official diagnosis. Frustrated, I ended the call and sent her a lengthy email that evening, stating that I didn't want to communicate with her in that manner. If she couldn't be supportive, I needed to go no contact. I established 3 rules that she and anyone else aware of the affair needed to follow: support both me and my ex-wife whether we reconciled or divorced, avoid making excuses for my ex-wife's actions, and recognize that she willingly betrayed me. I explained that I was dealing with significant trauma, depression, and self-destructive thoughts, and that respect was necessary during this time. During this period, my ex-wife and I attempted to reconcile and went on a 5-day trip to a popular city in southern Europe. Midway through the trip, we got semi-drunk, each of us having about 4 cocktails at a restaurant and a bar, but not excessively so. She admitted that she had met her former boyfriend twice in 2018, despite previously telling me she had only met him once that year. This revelation caused chaos. I booked another hotel room that evening, declaring that I wanted a divorce. My ex-wife had been offering partial truths for 8 months, making me feel like I was back at square one each time we communicated. The next day, we decided to end the trip together, and she promised to provide a proper timeline of her actions. A few days after returning home, it turned out she had met him 5 times in 2018, leaving heartbroken that she had marked their meetings with hearts in her daily planner. By this point, I was certain the affair was over and had been since September 2021. I despised the need to check her phone regularly, despite both of us having access to each other's phones and sharing location services, feeling more like her parole officer than a trusting spouse. I felt myself slipping away, likening myself to a tree that lost all its leaves in autumn, unnoticed until spring revealed it was dead. By June, my ex-wife was still dragging her feet and neglecting the things I asked of her, such as returning the fold-out couch from her mother's house to our spare bedroom, where we used to have intimate moments. The children had slept on that couch when she stayed at her mother-in-law's house. She always found excuses but eventually admitted she had simply forgotten repeatedly. I believe my ex-wife is exceptionally skilled at compartmentalizing, neatly organizing her thoughts into separate areas of her mind without addressing them. She was also uncommitted to therapy, attending sessions only every 3 to 4 weeks, and then her therapist took a 2-month summer vacation. I insisted she attend therapy more frequently, ideally every week or at least 2 to 3 times a month. Around this time, I began EMDR therapy after trying several other therapists to help cope with the trauma, and it has been beneficial. I have been on antidepressants since June 2021. My ex-wife never discussed the affair, choosing instead to sweep it under the rug and essentially wait for me to move on. I explained to her that this was not an option. I couldn't simply switch off my feelings and needed to work through the trauma, seeing her take responsibility and genuinely change if we were to stay together. Every time I brought up the affair, she became defensive, blamed other factors, and avoided doing what I asked of her, such as replacing the fold-out couch, attending therapy, finding resources to help us work through her infidelity, proactively planning dates and activities, and socializing with other couples. She was waiting for me to do all the work, and I became fed up. Consequently, I asked her to move out at the turn of the month from June to July 2022. She complied by moving into a spare bedroom at her mother's house, and although it was unfair for me to leave, I still went away a few days each month so she could stay home with the children. She would come by regularly to pick up things and be home for dinner while I went out with friends. Shortly after she moved out, my mother called her mother-in-law. Even though they don't have a close relationship, she usually invites her to dinner once a year when we are all present. My mother expressed her love and support for my ex-wife and offered assistance if needed, but she never directly contacted her. Instead, I received a phone call from my father in July 2022. He began by being understanding, but when I expressed how betrayed I felt by my brother, he revealed that he realized I was referring to his son. My heart sank, and I ended the conversation shortly after. Following this, I concluded that my ex-wife might have borderline personality disorder or something similar. My mother exhibited traits of a covert narcissist, and my younger brother was the classic, golden child, a screw-up. Despite this, I still loved and supported him. My brother, who is an alcoholic and had issues in his late teens with medications, couldn't maintain a job, leading our parents to purchase a house for him and his wife. My father had bought 50% of their house to provide enough space for their children, including stepchildren from the marriage my sister-in-law had cheated in, and their own children together. He sought our approval before making the purchase, and I quickly responded in support, not knowing at the time that his wife's mother owned the property they moved into. My brother has always needed things handed to him and always had excuses, whereas I have been stable, responsible, educated, and have always had my life together. I suspect my brother has been jealous of me but managed his feelings well until he used an opportunity to target me when I was already vulnerable. I believe his relationship with his wife made him sympathetic to my ex-wife and led him to believe that I had mistreated her since she cheated on me. In November, my brother called me after seeing me out walking the dog. He waved and smiled as if nothing had happened, so I flipped him off. An hour later, he called back to yell at me. I let him speak without responding, only asking if he thought he should apologize for betraying me. He laughed, and I hung up. That was the only time we spoke since January 2022. I haven't seen my mother since her birthday in March 2022 or my father since April 2022, and I haven't spoken to my brother since January 2022. In mid-November 2022, I sent my parents a long, detailed email explaining how and why I felt hurt by them, stating that unless they sincerely apologized, I wanted no contact with them until at least spring 2023. They did not reply. However, they showed up a few times at the gym I frequent. I had invited them both several times over the years because I am very fit and wanted to contribute to their health and spend time with them, but they always declined. Consequently, I switched to another gym and sent them another email in March 2023 reiterating the same points. They did not respond, except for a very brief message saying they loved me, which was about as substantial as the lengthy post I made on Facebook 3 weeks prior. That post discussed my depression and self-destructive thoughts, not as a cry for help, but prompted by a local man my age committing self-harm after losing his job in a public and humiliating manner. I posted about these thoughts, encouraging others to talk about them if they felt the same and offering my support to anyone struggling. That evening, I received a phone call from my father, the first in 9 months, expressing worry about me and wanting to drive me to an emergency mental facility to have me committed. I told him I didn't believe he was genuinely worried, as I had repeatedly informed him in the fall of 2021 and in 2022 about my depression and self-destructive thoughts, yet he brushed it off and hadn't contacted me for 9 months, indicating otherwise. He became very offended when I called him a liar, but I explained that I judge people by their current actions, not their words, which demonstrated that he was judging me rather than being supportive. I assured him that I would never treat my children poorly. I asked him what he thought about the emails I had sent, and he dismissed them as nonsense. I expressed how hurtful it was that he called me for help only when I was in a crisis, after months of not reaching out. Frustrated, I ended the conversation and haven't heard from him since. If you have any doubts about whether I was abusive or not, I want to clarify that when my wife asked for a divorce on April 1, 2021, I immediately agreed, stating that if she wanted it, she would have it. I wasn't angry, I was simply sad and cried. On September 12th, our significant date, I asked her to at least change the tires on her car to winter tires for her visits to her former boyfriend's place, emphasizing safety without anger or yelling, just sadness and tears. Considering she managed a 13-year on and off affair without any control from my side, how controlling could I possibly be? This is where I stand now. We are in the process of selling our house. I have resigned from my tenure at the university where I was teaching and have secured another position at a university in Southern Europe. My middle child is likely moving with me, my oldest has started renting with friends, and my youngest can join if they wish. We are co-parenting, which might present some challenges, but I have assured all my children that I will always have a spare bedroom available for them to visit or live with me whenever they want. I am willing to move to a larger apartment if necessary and will cover their travel expenses. I plan to rent a 3-bedroom apartment if my middle child insists on moving, as I will also have many friends visiting. I am genuinely looking forward to this change. Having lived abroad during my childhood, I am ready to leave Sweden for a while and might not return. I am also training for the Stockholm Marathon, scheduled in a month. Last year, I ran it very slowly, 4 hours and 23 minutes, and aim to improve to under 4 hours this time. My personal best is 3 hours and 32 minutes, but I'm not currently in that shape. I'll settle for 3 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Edit I received questions about my ex-wife and our current relationship. She is definitely working on herself now, but it took her moving out to snap into reality, and by then, it was too late. I am now indifferent towards her, wishing her the best as the mother of our children, but nothing more. She begged for another chance and tried to engage with me for months after moving out, but I consistently shut that down unless it involved our children. She seems to have accepted this stance since late last year. I have been traveling solo frequently in late 2022 and throughout 2023, often taking long weekends or week-long trips. During my travels, she stays at our house with the children, so our interactions are amicable. I have adopted a grey rock approach with her, avoiding conversations about her life, the children, or mutual friends, and I respect my own need for space. I have no interest in what her former boyfriend and his wife are up to and don't care about them at all. I never received an apology from him or anything like that. I called him once for about 10 minutes to ensure he understood that if he ever interfered in my life again, he would regret it. I am taller, stronger, younger, fitter, and have martial arts training, so he knows he stands no chance in a direct confrontation with me. He seemed terrified during that phone call, which was enough for me to get it off my chest. As for me, I tried online dating apps for a while but realized I'm not ready for that kind of relationship yet. I have too much emotional baggage and don't want to date right now. I am still severely depressed and experience self-destructive thoughts almost daily, but I am gradually improving. I have always been popular with Southern European women, so I might see what happens once I move, but it will need to happen naturally. Perhaps my Viking appearance, being tall, pretty fit, sporting a beard and tattoos, will attract attention. I could probably make a living dressing up as Thor in Times Square, posing for photos with tourists. Update 2 My children are aware of the general situation but not the specific details. I didn't want to overwhelm them or cause them to hate their mother. I assured them that if they ever had questions, I would answer them all, and they are all in shock as well. Regarding my ex-wife, she continued to ask for one more chance, but by that time, she had already exhausted every opportunity for reconciliation. She begged me, but I had run out of chances to give her. I stopped caring about her, much like the metaphorical dead tree I used earlier to describe our marriage. It felt lifeless, unnoticed until spring revealed its barrenness. I am done with her as far as I know. She is single now and likely won't ever speak to her former boyfriend again. If she does, that's her issue. Her former boyfriend is 3 years older than me, can't hold down a job, is an alcoholic, and overall an unsuccessful person. I would actually find it amusing to see my ex-wife attempt to make things work with him. It would be karma catching up to her. I haven't heard anything about him or his wife since November 2021, and frankly, I don't care about them. They divorced in 2017, and based on how his ex-wife talked about him, I seriously doubt they will ever reconcile. As for my family, I don't feel the need to elaborate further. I do have a sister, but she has stayed out of all this. I do, however, communicate less and less with her, as I believe she feels the need to pick a side, which is difficult. I am no longer in contact with my parents, meaning I haven't attended a family function in over a year, including extended family gatherings like graduations, weddings, and birthday parties. This means I'm disconnected from my entire extended family, as everyone is connected to either my mother or father. I have to accept this and am trying to make peace with it. I no longer care about burning bridges, secretly or otherwise. I hope to receive an apology from my parents, but I don't care much about my brother anymore, having witnessed his true character. I have always supported and defended him when others spoke ill of him, but now he has returned the favor by treating me poorly. I don't communicate with my ex-wife except regarding the children. She attempted to discuss other matters, like reconciling, but I consistently shut that down. She seems content with having her cake and eating it too, being delusional and believing she could continue cheating indefinitely without facing repercussions. She never considered the consequences of getting caught, as her affair was never truly about her former boyfriend but rather about escaping real life and having carefree weekends reminiscent of her youth. Honestly, I am no longer involved in her situation, it's no longer my circus, no longer my monkeys.